So let's pivot and talk about China in the world. 2014, pretty interesting year. I think it was probably, I think the statistics say it's going to be it was the first year in history in which outward Chinese investment exceeded foreign investment into China, a reality we're all going to be living with for a long time. It was also when all the hype was around the Alibaba IPO, biggest IPO in the history of the world. But I don't think it's going to be so straightforward for Chinese firms to go global. And maybe getting into the US will happen later rather than earlier. But you know, some of us in the room are old enough to remember just how hard it was for Japan to go global in the second half of the 80s and the 90s. I want to ask you both about that. I mean, let me start with you, Gang. If your firm and others have really cracked it in terms of how to do e-commerce, do you think about expansion outside China, or is there still so much more for you to do in the Chinese market that going global is sort of is gravy off in the future, icing on the cake?
I think right now we focus on China market. It's still a huge market. For example, right now, the total e-commerce is only less than 10% of total retail. And in the future, I think they are going to share the same market, probably 50-50. So there's, you know, we're growing the cake instead of cutting the cake. And we can also see that, I remember I mentioned that if you look at the internet companies, even the global internet giants, you know, none of them has made success in China. That's very intriguing.
So do you think, so let me ask you that, you know, that's an observation that many people I've spoken with who run Chinese e-commerce companies make.
Right.
Now, is that because of restrictions on internet access in China, or is it because they don't understand the Chinese market?
There's many different reasons, right? If I count all different multinational internet companies, right? If you count the eBay, Yahoo, Google, Amazon, Groupon, you know, none of them has made a significant success in China.
And in fact, Yahoo's value today, have you seen this story that says that Yahoo has negative value except for the chunk of Alibaba that it owns?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I would think that there are several major reasons. Okay, one is that many of the companies try to copy their global business model into China. That's definitely not the right thinking. Okay, you can see that many business model in China has been drastically changed. For example, eBay's business model is very different from Taobao's business model. Okay, eBay charges the platform entry fees, but Taobao is free for all the merchants, but only charge the product listing and marketing fees. And so that's one. You know, second is that very often the global companies, the local teams are not fully empowered. The decision is made in the headquarters. And you can see, I remember when I was working for Amazon, you know, they have 3 different business lines: the retail, the operation, the finance. Okay, so that reporting to the global headquarters. So that really slowed down the decision process. Okay, as we know that in the internet space, the decision speed is even more important than the decision quality. So you know, the time of the window of opportunity is very short. You have to make very fast decisions. You know, the total growth has been compressed in a very short time window. You have to make a quick decision. As long as you are sure this is in the right direction, you move in a zigzag way, but you're getting there. But if you don't make a decision, you're marginalized. So that's second reason I think of. Third is that the international companies, okay, they have much higher cost in terms of it's using expats, compliances, FCPA, you know, all those things really not only slow down the decision process, but also, you know, increase the cost.
Okay, so your call is that at least where e-commerce is concerned, there's still a lot of hay to be made in the Chinese sun going forward. Chang, I'm wondering, you have a global perspective and a much broader perspective. You're telling me you spent 6 months of last year figuring out what the big mega trends in China were. I don't think I saw China goes global as one of your mega trends. What do you think? Will we see a world-beating Chinese automobile company in the next 10 years?
Well, the issue really is, as sort of sound business strategies, you want to go where the highest returns are. And today, the highest returns and highest growth rates are in China. So why would you go from a 10% annual growth territory to a 2% growth territory where you also have protectionism and other issues, which explains partly why Chinese companies are still focusing on China for now, except for a few very global businesses like telecommunication equipment. So for Huawei, for Zhongxin, they're going global because they've basically monopolized the Chinese market. You don't hear about Alstom or other Alcoa and other U.S. suppliers anymore. And similarly, you have the appliances businesses. GE is out of that business. So you have Haier, which is now in the U.S. with innovative products. One of the things they came up with when they first went to the U.S. is a desktop fridge for the student dorms. So you can it doubles as a desk. So it's a very smart thing. And they also come up with a wine cooler for smaller spaces. These things are selling very well in the US. So they're actually coming up with innovative products to get into markets, but very selectively.
So Sam and I were in Jakarta a little while ago. And I was blown away coming in. It's a slow ride from the Jakarta airport into Jakarta, so you get a lot of time to look at the billboards. And the billboards were Huawei and Xiaomi billboards, not Samsung billboards. Right. So do you think that, let's say if we're talking devices for a second, can Xiaomi really out Samsung do really high quality products at lower price than in the rapid adoption model that Samsung has used so effectively?
If people look at Xiaomi as a product company, they're wrong. Samsung is a product company. They thrive on innovations. They thrive on devices, and then the full range of products, technology from semiconductors to TVs to VCRs to camcorders to cell phones. Xiaomi is a new company. It's a technology company with a new business model, basically cutting through the distribution channels to go direct. In China, if you want to buy a Xiaomi phone, you have to go on the internet. And their margins are thin, but their model is different.
But volume is high.
Yes, volume is high. They're growing very fast. So they go to new markets. They're going to look at how to revolutionize the way they sell products. So these two are very different companies. Samsung is a product-based company. Xiaomi is a supply chain management company with innovative technologies to enable you to cut the distribution cost more than your products. The Xiaomi phone is not an innovative product through and through. They're imitations, to be honest.
But of course, it is the case. I always find the Apple-Samsung battle so interesting when half of an Apple phone is based on Samsung components. So we live in interesting times. Warning to everyone in the audience, we're about to pivot the conversation to include all of you, but I wanted to ask you both. I promised that we wouldn't talk very much about that Chinese growth rate and whether 7.5% is real and whether it can be continued, etc. But I did want to ask you, given both of your optimism about the real Chinese private sector, do you think that if we talk about a soft landing or a change in the equilibrium growth rate from China from 10 to 7 or something like that, was Xi Jinping right to say when he first came to power that the private sector, the rise of the private sector, is the most important feature that will give China a soft landing into a consumption-based economy? Do you think he was right, Gang, to say that?
I believe so. Also, I believe that the stability of the country is very important. give also the openness to give entrepreneurs enough freedom to for innovation is critical for the for China.
And do you think it's gonna work?
I think it will. The reason being, you know, when people look at China, they think it's a big country with a stagnant state-owned sector. But underneath that, you see a very vibrant private sector. For example, we just had, I founded and now run a real estate association. We had an annual meeting in Guangzhou where we invited a company which is very innovative called Color Life. It's a subsidiary of Fantasia, a large real estate developer. They have shifted their business model from building apartment buildings now to serving the communities that they've built. For example, this company does all kinds of community services. They put in apps, they put in the devices in the homes they build. So with one touch, you can order your meals, you can order laundry, you can order, you can order even a clinical service, you know, a nurse or a doctor. So they serve about 2 million households in their communities. And this company had funding of only 100 million RMB from the parent company. And they now have produced 70 million Hong Kong dollars of net income. And then this company is growing like a weed. These things, actually, we don't see that in the US. This is so innovative. You know, when you talk about communities, you talk about a town. You talk about maybe a little township or you know, the Bronx or Brooklyn. But you don't have this there. These guys collect fees for you for telephones, for utilities. They provide so much convenience to the residents. And they're talking about the e-commerce 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, and O2O 3.0, 4.0. It's very innovative, and then this is just a small example.
Okay, so this is innovation, but I promised you, and I think we should put on the agenda because it's so important. So you're leaving Warburg Pincus to tackle China's protein challenge.
Yes.
So middle class consumers like to eat more meat than poorer people do, but you're concerned that the Chinese agriculture market is much less efficient than it should be. So everyone knows protein's a problem, but you know, I'm Australian. We think we're going to sell all the protein to you. You want to start producing the protein in China now?
For full disclosure, you know, they put my title there. I can still use the title until June 30th. I've tendered my resignation, and I'm going through a transition period with the firm. The reason being, I think agriculture, China is the world's largest agriculture product consumer, but one of the most backward producers in the world. Its use of fertilizers is 4 times that of the United States, and per capita productivity is probably only 1/10 of the United States. Why? Because the land parcels are too small. And each family, this
sounds like you need to get into politics to change that. You can't. You're
that's
going to change that as a business person?
By the government.
Okay.
The government is pushing that.
Yeah.
So it is a backward, underdeveloped, and inefficient sector. And why does China have so many scandals in food production and food distribution? It's because inefficiency and small farmers selling to distributors who want to make a faster and bigger buck. You know what they do? They put all kinds of additives in it. So you need to really make it efficient, like modern farming in the US or Canada, by having enough size. Then you can do what Xiaomi is doing, leapfrogging just shortening the supply chain and go straight to the consumer. So that's our goal, my goal, to bring food from the field to your mouth.
Jeff,
hey, maybe you can use Yihaodian to do
use us as a channel, right?
Right.
Jeff, let me mention 2 examples to show that the new policy that has been launched, pro-business policies. One is the cross-border e-commerce. You know, Shanghai, in fact, 5 cities had new policy for cross-border e-commerce. People can buy things directly from from other countries. And
so that's through the free trade zone in Shanghai or more generally?
Through free trade zone. And if people buy things with duties less than 500, it will be waived. So that's definitely pro-business. And second example is on the online sale of medicine, drugs and medical devices. The government has allowed 3 companies to try, the online sale of OTC drugs, and I heard that very soon, in fact, probably in the first quarter, the prescription drugs will be allowed to sell online. I think this all, I think the government is more open now to allow for better, customer.
So maybe there are still some things that the US has to offer China. 2 of my favorite new innovations in the US, maybe because I'm getting older so I care much more about healthcare. One is that CVS, the big drug chain, is going to have this new pathology thing where you put your thumbprint down and you get a little prick and they give you 95% of what a pathology test used to give you, and that's going to be in all CVS very soon. The other is I was talking with the founders of Warby Parker, a Wharton founded company doing cheap glasses, where they're now going to be able to wipe out optometrists by just shining a device at each of your eyes and measuring your eye. Maybe we can help you put that into China.
Actually, I had a conference call with the CEO and the CFO of CVS, which wants to get into China.
They want to do this in China or they don't?
They do. The issue really is corruption, which is one of my big themes for mega trends. The corruption in the pharmaceutical production and distribution channel is astounding, to a point where if you're in the hospital and you don't pay enough bribes, the doctors give you maybe 2 pills, you only get 1. The card pushing lady, you need to really pay. And the surgery, the doctor who does the surgery, you need to pay. That's the issue. When CVS comes in, it's going to affect so many people in terms of the money they take along the value chain. That's an issue that is preventing a lot of the industries which can be changed, but are not.